celebrating 10 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Tom Harper.
Welcome to Anything is Possible. My guest today is Tom Harper. Tom, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
You were born in Maryville?
Maryville, Tennessee.
As we've been taught to say, Maryville?
Maryville.
Tell me about growing up in Maryville.
Well, I was 2 years old when we left, so I have very few memories. We moved from there to a little town in Texas. My dad was with Alcoa, and he built a plant there, and I stayed there until I was 5. So, and then we moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I started first grade in Pittsburgh.
So you spent the formative years of your life up north?
Pretty much a Yankee.
Pretty much a Yankee. When did you find your interest and love for cars?
Oh, very early. I used to make model cars. And
do you remember any of the models you prized that you made that you thought, this is the coolest car ever?
They were mainly, back then you did a lot of riding customs, you know, Model A.
So when I was growing up, and I might be just a scooch younger
I would
than you.
think so.
But we would play this game in my neighborhood. My brother had a Barracuda, and we would play this game. We'd sit on the front porch, and the guys would drive their cars up and down the street, and we'd close our eyes, and by sound,
That's right.
we tried to tell what kind of car it was. Did you ever do that?
Oh yeah, back in the muscle car days, that was quite a thrill.
Did you own any muscle cars?
I had, my first car was a Model A Ford, 1929, that I paid $25 for. And it didn't run, and especially my dad was very lenient on letting me mess around with cars, so we kind of rebuilt it, took his garage space, so he had to park outside, and tore this thing apart. And then I bought another Model A.
Brothers and sisters?
I have 2 older brothers. One was killed several years ago in a plane crash, so I have one older brother.
Tell me about your mom and dad.
My mom and dad were from Tennessee. My dad was from Louisville. My mom was from Fall Branch, Tennessee.
Know where that is.
And, well, good, most people don't. And, you know, we grew up in a unique family. My dad started with Alcoa when he was 16 and co-op through college during the Depression, and kind of moved up through that. That's why I grew up in Pittsburgh.
How did you get back to Tennessee?
I always kind of wanted to come back. I was working with my brother. He had a chain of movie theaters. And I re-met my wife, who I knew in college a little bit, but not much, and I saw her at a party about a year and a half before I came back. I called her, and well, I called her when I got down here and said, "Do you want to go out?" And she said no. So, you know,
Charming.
my dear friend Sandy Bellamy talked about it. He said, she's a potter, so you ought to call her and see if you can buy some pottery. I said, that's a great idea. At the time, neither one of us knew what pottery cost, so we went to the Ruby Tuesdays, which I was a partner in, and we just took all the money out of the cash register, so I had about $1,000. And I called her and said, I'd like to buy some pottery. She said, well, come on out.
Not the pottery move.
So the pottery only cost me $20,
but you found the woman of your dreams.
Oh yeah, she's the light of my life.
Yeah, and
we've been married 32 years now. So.
Wow, and so I guess once she got her hands on you, she started to mold and,
yeah, quite a bit.
And fashion you. What's her name?
Janet.
Janet. So Janet, you've done a good job with this young man. So you come back to work with your brother. Right in between there, though, you mentioned Sandy Bell and Ruby Tuesday. So
when I got out of, I was in engineering school. When I graduated, I was enrolled to go to Vanderbilt Law School, but it was 9 months period before I'd go. And Sandy came to me and said, "I'm going to start this restaurant, and I'd like you to be a partner in it." And that sounded pretty neat, you know. And So I did, and I was involved with the number one, the first one up on campus, for about 8 or 9 months, and then I went to Vanderbilt Law School for about 3 months, and I recognized that I was not going to be an attorney.
So what happened after that?
Well, I came back here for a little bit, then I went to Pittsburgh to work with my brothers, and this was before I came back down when I met Janet, and I wanted to move back. So I moved back here, engaged to my wife with no job, and her parents were pretty lenient about that. I think her dad was a little skeptical, and I did some different things. I was a landman for a while, bought oil and gas leases, and actually Sandy was the one that said, you know, we ought to buy a car dealership.
Really?
Yeah. And
now, you had no knowledge of how to run a car dealership.
no,
right?
none at all.
So Sandy, just being your friend, just goes, we ought to buy a car dealership?
Well, that's,
I mean, who does that?
That's like how he is. So
Really?
Oh yeah. And we approached a few people and made a deal with Roddy Rogers at the time to buy the Porsche Audi Jaguar from him. So that was in 1981. So
How old were you at this time?
I was 30.
How does a 30-year-old guy pull that
Well,
off?
we had to get the manufacturer's approval, we had to have someone that was in it. So we had a partner that was the sales manager at the Porsche Audi. We brought him in because manufacturers wanted someone with experience. And he lasted about 90 days, and then I was on my own.
My guest today is Tom Harper, a guy who loves cars and who has had an incredible life of possibility. He's also being molded, even as we speak. You'll hear the rest of his story coming up. This is Anything is Possible, celebrating 10 years of possibility.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
You know, I believe alcoholism is a disease that is genetic, and so I was an alcoholic and an addict for a long time.
We shouldn't have done this show in the studio this week. We should be driving. I mean, just the sound of the brands that you represent. Great to have Tom Harper on Anything is Possible.
Thank you.
And when I talked to you before this interview, you told me you never imagined that you'd own car dealerships and be doing this kind of thing, that this possibility just kind of emerged in your life. When we left off, I was asking you, how does a 30-year-old guy buy the Porsche dealership and make a success of it? Would you qualify yourself or count yourself as a salesperson?
Not really. I'm not very good at that. I've been blessed with the people I have. You know, I look at my job as a somewhat of a cheerleader with the folks. I'm very blessed with the people who work for me. I mean, that's what makes the dealerships do so well, is all these great people I've had with me, some of them for 30 years. And I'm a big believer in a stress-free environment in a car dealership, and that's unusual, but I think it is really what we strive to do, to give people an opportunity to do the best they can. And, you know, if they don't have a good day, I don't care. You know, tell people, if you messed up, let's look at it and then let's move on. It's a brand new day today, so.
You gotta walk me through how you got there.
I was when we first started, I was a workaholic micromanager to the nth degree. And I had a fellow that's helped me over the years say, you know, this workaholism is not good. It'll kill you. So I really started trying not to be a workaholic and leaving early some days, and it was very hard on me. And then I realized that as I allowed people that probably knew more about what they're doing than I did to do their jobs as best they could, I took some stress out, because I think, you know, the fish rots from the head down, so if I was the rotten fish, I needed to change. And amazingly, we started making more money.
When you backed up.
Yeah. So
talk to me about the suffix aholic, because based on our conversations, workaholic wasn't the only
No,
aholic part
I'm
of
a
your life.
recovering alcoholic and addict, and I think that experience has given me a totally different perspective on truly living one day at a time. So,
Walk me through when that got a hold of you and what it did to your life. You remember when you started to feel yourself slipping and
I was, you know, I believe alcoholism is a disease that is genetic, and so I was an alcoholic and addict for a long time. I always used the justification in college. I took a lot of drugs and alcohol, but I did very well in school. So, you know, that was my
Right.
justification then. And then in the business, we were doing pretty well. So that was my justification then. When it was killing me and certainly very hard on my family. And I think you hit a bottom, and I had a lot of help hitting that bottom. Because of my ego, I thought I could manage this, and I thought my life was manageable. Well, it was a disaster.
do you remember hitting bottom and what bottom was?
Yeah, it was a period where I got so miserable that getting up was a problem. I was just miserable and just struggled. And I went through a couple of treatment centers and did real well. And I met a guy in the treatment thing, a guy named Bob McCall. He's since passed away. He was a remarkable guy.
Tell me about Bob.
Bob was this guy that worked at Cornerstone Recovery that had been in the recovery business for a long time. And typically you find people that are in treatment centers and recovery are recovered alcoholics or addicts themselves. Well, Bob actually wasn't. His insight into the disease and what it does to you was, you know, I learned early on when he would say, you know, he didn't force things on you. He would say, I got a hunch if you look at this. And I remember my wife and me saying, you know, I've learned anytime Bob says, I got a hunch you should look at this.
You should look at this.
I looked at it. And he was really a remarkable guy. And I think he saved my life. There's no doubt about that.
Talk to me about pre-recovery Tom versus post-recovery Tom. What'd you give up and what did you gain?
Well, I didn't give anything up but misery, and that's what the disease does. It kills you physically, spiritually, mentally. It is it's an insidious disease that, and recovery is very hard because one of the biggest parts of the disease is denial you have it. So you have this disease. It's not like a lot of the other diseases that you know you have it. You got your brain saying, well, you're not like that. You know, I always thought an addict was some guy that was shooting up heroin.
Right.
Or the alcoholic was the guy that was broke under the bridge. And that's just not the case.
Did your friends and the people that love you, did they know? Did they have a sense, or were you so good at quote unquote managing it?
I thought I was good, but I wasn't at all. And that's symptomatic of the disease too.
All right, so ponder on this for just a second, and we'll pick this up when we come back. Why didn't you lose your dealerships? Why didn't you totally crash and burn and become bankrupt? There had to be something that was holding that world together for you to even have time to recover.
It's called grace.
We'll talk about it when we come back. This is Anything is Possible.
Coming up,
You know, my success in the car business is not because of me. It's because of the people I had work for me. So, you know, they covered. They covered for me.
He said it's called grace. So let's just pick it up there, because as a student of possibility, I mean, and I don't count possibility as okay, somebody starts with nothing and they make a whole lot of money. I count possibility as you take something that's impossible and you take the M off of it, which means not, and then you position yourself so that something is able to be, which is what the word possible is. And in listening to your story about your life, what seems impossible to me is most people have such a hard time pulling themselves back from the brink or being pulled back from the brink. And I'm thinking if alcohol and addiction has a hold of you, first thing alcohol and addiction does, especially if you bring to it a certain amount of arrogance, and that arrogance or hubris could be born of success.
Absolutely.
So you're successful, so you're like, what's the problem? Typically, you start to burn through a lot of resources and relationships, and the bottom falls out. But I'm curious to know, how does a Tom Harper, you got the world by the tail, how does your world just not implode?
I think personally it did, and I did a lot of damage to my relationship with my wife and kids and the people who worked for me. But on the other side, like I said, I was very blessed with the people who've been working for me for years that you know, my success in the car business is not because of me, it's because of the people I had work for me. So, you know, they covered for me. And I didn't lose everything. You're right about hubris. I try to replace that each day with humility now, and that's a lot better way to live. You know, like I said, it's grace. You know, my higher power of God allowed me the grace not to burn out and die or lose everything.
So tell me what your family was able to learn through this, because that's one of the big things that happens is, like you said, life breaks us all, but when we repair, we're typically stronger in the broken places, is one quote that I've heard. So if your family held with you through this, maybe your relationships got stronger, because, I mean, you really do have, it takes love to stay with somebody that's destroying themselves.
Right.
Right.
I think Janet and my two kids, they were very angry when I was drinking and using, and rightly so. But they recognize that recovery is a family deal, and also alcoholism and addiction is a family disease. It affects everyone around you. And again, I was offered the opportunity to work on getting well, and it hadn't been easy at times, and there have been relapses, and it's been hard on them. But again, I get back to grace. I had a wife that stayed with me, struggled with it, I'm sure, and I had kids that, you know, it's the great thing now is my kids like me. You know,
well, see,
that's a big plus.
I caught during the break, if you could see his feet, he's wearing New Balance, and he said, I don't wear hard shoes, I wear these. But you had to get some hard shoes because you were in your son's wedding. And what just caught me was you said, I was the best man.
That was neat. And that wouldn't have happened if I was drinking. You know, when you look at recovery and look at what you have today, you always say, why in the hell didn't I get better sooner? It's you don't have a call on that. You get the opportunity, and you know, I could be drinking tomorrow. I don't know, but today, it's all I worry about. I've got three premises I try to live by. I have a strong spiritual presence in my life. I live one day at a time, and I don't take myself too seriously. And if I can keep those three, it's like a three-legged stool, you know, milk stool. If I keep those all there, I stay pretty well balanced.
What's interesting in talking to you prior to this interview is how that perspective has helped you be a better manager and your dealerships are booming.
I think that I have to, when I look at the folks that work with me, you know, you always have to weigh their pluses and minuses. And I really spend a lot more time on the pluses and the minuses. You know, the only caveat to that is dishonesty. We don't have that. Everybody knows it. You do that, sorry, you're gone. But you know, people's character defects, you can't really change them, only they can change them, and you try to reinforce the positives, and you can certainly bring up the negatives and say, yeah, look at this.
You know, I'm sitting here and what I'm about to say to you is going to sound really weird. And I know you wouldn't take anything for the pain of this journey, but there's a part of me I'm glad that I met the pain processed version of Tom Harper, the one that's been through all of that. Because don't you feel like you're a better version of you, closer to what?
Oh, absolutely.
What was possible?
I think that recovery and you know, I'm an active member in a 12-step program. It gives you such a different perspective, and it gives you a lot of gratitude that you know, today's a good day. And you know, the thing about me, you know, if I'm not drinking or using, I have such a low bar on what's a good day that, you know, if I don't do that, it's a good day. So it makes it pretty easy to have good days most every day.
I want to thank you for the courageous way in which you shared a very personal part of your story of possibility. I think your life is a life of possibility because of what you've been through and what your recovery demonstrates to people who are watching today about what's possible.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
There's help out there.
You make a really good best man. Not to mention the fact that he's driving away in a Bentley today. So, Tom Harper,
Bentley.
thanks for coming by.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll see you next time.